Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good actually. It's Friday. Friday doesn't really mean anything anymore, but I'm still excited it's Friday.
Yes, I share that excitement. Yeah, some weeks it does for me and some weeks it doesn't. So, we'll see. But yeah, I'm good. I'm glad you're doing well. I had a chance to peruse your Twitter and
Oh no.
no, it was great. It was wonderful. And I was just wondering, I know that you say that, you essentially the reason you started writing was for representation, right? Was to create what wasn't available for you. And could you say more about that and just about your novels and how it's grown and developed and yeah, what other impetus has come up as you've been doing the work?
Sure, definitely. First of all, it makes me laugh that you said you check my Twitter because I feel like my my books and my actual personality have very different vibes. And so when people like they read the book and it's all like dark fantasy, murder, assassins, all this stuff, and then like I'm making jokes about anime on Twitter. They're like, something's not adding up here. but
But I can see the connection. I can see it. Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit about me. So my name is Roseanne Brown, and I'm the author of A Song of Wraiths and Ruin, which just came out on June 2nd of this year. And so,
Congratulations.
thank you. So a quick pitch for Wraiths. So Wraiths is set in a fantasy world inspired by West African folklore, and it follows two protagonists, a refugee named Malik and a princess named Karina. So Malik, when his younger sister is kidnapped by a vengeful spirit, he makes a deal with the spirit that in exchange for his sister's freedom, he has to kill the crown princess Karina. So he enters a competition to win Karina's hand in marriage in order to kill her. However, he doesn't know that Karina's mother has just been assassinated, and she's found a forbidden spell to bring her back to life. But to do so, she needs the heart of a king. So she set up this entire marriage competition so she can marry someone, kill him, and then sacrifice him for the ritual. So both of them are trying to kill each other, and they're not aware of that the other one has these plans. So it's dual POV, so you're seeing both their points of views, and you're seeing as they kind of try and maneuver around each other without
Right.
realizing it. And of course, you see the moment where they actually finally meet for the first time, and they realize their perception of each other is actually very wrong, and how both their plans just kind of go off the rails.
Hmm.
And so I got
Wow.
this
Yeah.
idea. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a long pitch too. Like people are like, "Oh, what's your book about?" And I'm just like, "Okay, do you have like 30 to 45 seconds?"
Yeah. No, but it's wonderful. It's very exciting. And I look forward to reading it.
Thank
I love
you.
a little fantasy, and especially I feel like in the fantasy world, which is really interesting. There's like a very like sincere underrepresentation of Black people there.
Mhm.
Um, and as someone in my prior conversation, I was talking about how in this time I'm giving myself space to imagine a different future, a
Mhm.
different world where like I do feel seen, I do feel heard, where things do work for me, and if they don't, it's not because of something I can't control, right? um, and so it's interesting to me that in the world of fantasy there's such a lack of Black people being represented, and yet I do understand why. Um, and so I really appreciate you kind of like stepping out and being like, I'm gonna make this a reality in the fantasy world. um, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I definitely agree that fantasy and just genre fiction in general is just such a great space to work through so many things that, especially coming from marginalized backgrounds,
Yes.
if you set it in the real world, there's just certain things you just have to do. Like the truth is, as much as there's this big push for like books that don't center on just Black pain, and that's so important. The truth is, when you write about a Black character in the real world, you have to address racism to an extent because it's going to affect the way they move through that world. Like that's just the
Exactly.
truth. Even if it's like a fluffy rom com where
Mhm.
like the stakes are very sort of just kind of low stakes, like it's still your character just even when they walk into a store, it's something you just kind of have to be aware of, stuff like
Yep.
that. Whereas with fantasy, because it's a world you get to construct and you get to kind of decide the parameters, that was really freeing because in the race world they still deal with
Mhm.
things like oppression. There is still a lot to talk about sort of state violence and sort of like colonialism and like sort of imperial forces,
Mm.
but it's very constructed in a very particular way because I'm very aware of how the narrative around those things is used in our world. And I was like, I didn't kind of want to replicate just without thinking the sort of violence we see done to Black bodies just in the real world and in fiction so much. So it's very important to me the characters don't face racism. Like, that's not to say they don't face oppression, but it's not racism the way that we as Black people are used to seeing it. And so
Mm.
that's something for me that's just so fun to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not a one-to-one exactly to our experience of anti-Blackness, but still has echoes of that experience, it's less about the what does anti-Blackness literally look like and more like how do structures like that affect people? How do you emotionally process through that? Kind
Mm-hmm.
of taking that step away from it, but still giving space to address it.
Right.
For me, that was something more, it was more tolerable in that sense. It was more like a way to kind of process that in a way that didn't straight up put it on the page in your face. Like, let's recreate this trauma you've lived your entire life with.
Right. Right. So, in speaking about like how intentional you were in creating your world and the parameters of it, I'm sure I can take a great guess. But who do you imagine reading your novels? Who are you writing for?
I think like my priority is always going to be young Black kids. That is 100% always going to be my priority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for me, I'm a Black immigrant. I was actually born in Ghana, and
Mm.
then my family immigrated to America when I was very young. And
Okay.
so in that sense, it's been kind of a fascinating liminal space being sort of Black in America, but not being a direct American descendant, and like kind of navigating those two different worlds and navigating kind of like what it means to truly be from one place, not live there, and to live in another place you're not actually from. And
Yes.
so those are experience. That's something I never really saw. And so to other people like me, kids like me who had gone through that, that's sort of the primary group I'm writing towards. And then also within that, but within more broadly outside that, also very specifically sort of mental illness and like stigma. There's so much stigma in the Black community, even talking about things like anxiety, depression, um,
Absolutely.
yes, and even more sort of severe mental illnesses. And it's just like, I really wanted to just put that on the page straight up.
Mm.
Like, I know even my family where like talks about like therapy and like just like let's just not mention that because like there's just so many images people have in their head. So I was like, no, we're gonna put it on the page, put it straight out. And like I know that was something that was very important to me getting on the page. So I
Yes.
think any readers who have struggled with mental illness, who have faced that battle every day, that's definitely somewhat people who I hope get to read the book and get something from it.
Yes. Yes. Wonderful. I love that. I do think, um, like we said, in the setting of a world where you can create the parameters, right, and you get to decide who's who and how things flow, inserting something like the reality of mental illness, right? Of and humanizing the things that happen to people. We like, especially right now, we're talking a lot about like systemic oppression and systemic racism, and it's good to talk about these things and be aware of them. But I think it's even more important for the sake of folks to understand how imperative it is that we change these things is to understand the personal experience of these systems that are in place, how people are affected on a daily basis, and how something like systemic oppression, systemic racism feeds into mental illness, right?
Mhm.
And how they work together, and especially for mental illness being stigmatized in the Black community. It's a thing that like really breaks my heart because there's so much healing that needs to take place amongst Black people specifically,
Mhm.
and a lot of it because there is a stigma and we don't take that space to heal, or we're afraid of the space as we understand it, to step into it and heal and process. The systemic pressures then just exacerbate the pain that we're already in, the things that we're not unpacking, right? um, so that's really exciting and encouraging to know that you've inserted that discussion into your work. And so when you were growing up, becoming a writer, right? What inspired you? What, even though you were looking for yourself and not succeeding in that, but what did you read? What did you experience that made you say, this is the thing that I want to do?
Okay, so I actually can kind of pinpoint the exact moment where I was like really want to be a writer. And
Amazing.
so, like I mentioned, I was born in Ghana, and so English was not my first language.
Mm.
And so for years, I spoke our native language, Chi, which is a language in Ghana, and I could not get English, did not understand it. My teachers were calling my parents like, this, she's probably gonna have to be held back. Like, she just does not get it. And like, y'all, like, my family does not want to have the kid who was held back in like daycare. That would have been
Right.
embarrassing.
Yeah.
No. So it was a struggle for a long, long time. And I remember the distinct moment when things switched. I was at BJ's with my mom, and there was this toy I really wanted. And I was like, Mom, I want the toy, I want the toy. And she was like, okay, I want you to go to the book table. I want you to pick up one book and read it the whole way through in English. And if you can tell me what it's about, I'll get you the toy. So I was like, fine, Mom. And like, I stomped my way over. And the book was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Now, I want to add the caveat. I'm talking here just about the work itself. I do not agree with J.K. Rowling or any of the stuff she said lately. That is a whole lot of mess that a
Yeah.
lot of people have rightfully spoken up about. And just,
Absolutely.
we could have an entire separate conversation on that.
Yes, we could.
But this is not about her. It's about kind of what the work itself did, in the
Yes.
sense of what Harry Potter itself did for me there. Like, this idea that like a work could be so immersive and it could be
Mhm.
aimed towards children. It could have simple language, but just really just this whole second world, so much detail, so much like imagery, all this, like, it just blew my mind. Because
Mm.
at that time I'm like 7, 8, like, I think the most complex thing I'd read was maybe like a Barney tie-in book to the TV show. And so like, and the thing that it held my attention. Like,
Mhm.
my grasp of the language was not that strong, but I was like, it sucked me in. And from that
Yeah.
moment, I was like, oh my goodness, I want to write something that makes people feel the way this book makes me feel. And
Mm.
from then on, everything changed. Like, I was reading ridiculously, like, every day. I was writing. My first like full thing I remember writing was Anne Moore's Harry Potter fan fiction. Like, it was just like, I'm like, I gotta do this. And from that moment on, I feel like I never didn't want to be a writer after that. Like, for
Mm.
that, it was just like, even as I was studying other things, and I've done so many other jobs in between now and then, but just like, writing was the thing I always kept coming back to. Because I always like to tell people, it's like, when it comes to writing, it's, even if nobody had read Wraiths, I would have still written it. Like, it's, I literally don't know how to not do it.
Mm. Mm. That's amazing. Um, and it's so, I always think it's so amazing when people can point to the specific moment, right? When like something shifts and you're like, oh, this is the thing. Like, I've landed somewhere and this is something I need to engage with forever. Right.
Mhm.
And that particular moment, I think, especially for like young Black children, like having, first of all, like having the space to do that, right? To having the space to be able to like become enthralled with the novel. And I think it's so wonderful, like how your mother is a part of that story
Yes.
and being like, okay, yeah, you can have the thing that you want, but you have to do this first. Which obviously had this like multi-pronged benefit for you, right? Of being like, okay, yes, a deeper understanding and relationship with the English language, I think is really important. Um, and also like finding your calling, like what really matters to you, and kind of opening up a new world of expression for you, I think is so beautiful, and exciting. And I can imagine that there will be other like young Black children reading your book and having a similar experience, like it's talking, this is about me, like there isn't, because I feel like a lot of times with art, and especially in novels, there's that distance, right?
Mhm.
Where you're like, oh yeah, okay, like I relate to this person, I relate to this person, and then you end up questioning the relationship that you're developing with the character, because although you feel this alignment, they don't look like you, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's a small thing, but it's not, right? If like there's this character that you're really connecting with, and then you're trying to understand, because of the way our world works and the way that we're taught to interact with each other and perceive each other, um, that kind of that break in the relationship, right? And like leaving it, and then the onus being on the child to somehow understand what's going on here, right? And place themselves somewhere in the narrative.
Mhm.
um so yeah, that's amazing. I love that your mother is a part of that to encourage you toward what you want, and what you needed. And in terms, sorry, were you going to say something?
Just the only thing I want to add is, I think what I love most about that story is there's very much this sort of the stereotype of sort of like the Black parents, the immigrant parents who don't support the arts, don't support like you show a talent for art and they're just gonna be like, go become a doctor, go become a lawyer, all that stuff. And I
Right.
really love that, like, from the start, like my parents really encouraged that. And like we have a strong storytelling tradition in Africa, and like they really like they still want me to get good grades in like in every subject, don't get me wrong. But they
Yes.
never really like they never actively discouraged it, like, oh, focus on math instead of this. Like they were getting me books when they could, take me to the library when we couldn't afford books, like really just kind of destroying that idea that like, oh, this is what black parents are like, this is what immigrant parents are like, because like
Right.
no, that was not. Also, I never got that toy that I've recently realized, so like I need to actually get on that. I was so enthralled by Harry Potter, I never thought about the toy again, which I think was
Lost
cool,
interest.
but
Yeah.
I need to get on that.
That's amazing. And yeah, I thank you for bringing up that point. It is true. That is a common stereotype with immigrant parents, and especially with Black immigrant parents, being like the focus is education. So you get the big job, so you can make the money. We don't have to worry about you. And, and we understand, right, the logical and like heartfelt place that pressure comes from. But I think it is really important to highlight that your parents were like, no, we see you, we see what you're interested in, we see what's like pushing you and what's exciting you, and we want you to have more of that in your life and to pursue
Yes.
it, because they love and care about you, and support you. So yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for raising that point. Um, and so as you have become a writer, I know you said there were like mini jobs in between, in the midst of, as I think is very common for artists. Um, was there ever, I know you said there was never a moment where you said that you didn't want to be a writer, but were there moments where you were like, ooh, I'm not sure if this is like the thing that I want to make my profession, that I want to be like known for in the world? Were there any moments like that? And like, how did you navigate those?
So I think for me, actually, probably the first half of college, and my not even first half, maybe the first 3 years, simply because I actually went to college. I didn't study creative writing. I studied journalism. So
Mm,
still a writing-based profession, because writing's always been my strongest suit, because it's what I cared most about. But it definitely seemed a more safer, more realistic option, and like putting my strengths, and like it's still storytelling in a way, but sort of real storytelling.
yes.
But for me personally, I just found the environment was just, and it goes back to the anxiety thing. It was just making my anxiety spike really high. And
Mm,
like I was doing my internships and I was doing my articles and doing my publications, and I was just like, I cannot go on like this, because I'm like, and at first for a while I'm like, is writing the problem? Like, am I? Because like there's this idea we're told, like if you love the craft enough, you'll
mhm.
suffer through anything for it, you know. And so part of it, because like journalistic writing is itself an art form, and is a very important type of writing. And so like, and I love the craft of it, and but I was like, what is wrong with me? Because I thought I wanted this. I'm doing writing. I'm writing things I care about, because I did care about all my articles. But it's like,
Right.
why then am I not enjoying this? Why am I not, like, am I the problem? And
Mm,
so from there, after college, I actually went to Japan to start teaching English.
mhm.
Um, and that was a whole different change. Like, it was definitely it was definitely something I'd never done before. And I knew then, because I also considered teaching for a while, because I love working with kids, and that's part of why I write for young adults. I write for that age group, because I just love working with teens. And I knew then, I also, like, I loved my job as a teacher, honestly, and I really could see myself going back to it. But the writing always kept on happening. Like,
Mm,
I'd legit wake up. I had to be at work usually by around 8 o'clock, so I'd be waking up like 5:15 in the morning, so I could write before work, and then get
mm,
ready for work, get to work, then I'd get home, take a nap, and then I'd write for the rest of the night.
mm.
Like, just so I could finish writing around the 40-hour work week. And it just became this thing that, like, even with all the things I had to do for teaching, I still kept on coming back to writing.
Right.
So, for a while, I was like, okay, the balance is hard. Honestly, the balance really is hard figuring it
That's
out,
a lot of work. Yeah.
because like the starving artist myth is complete bull crap. Like, when I think of like when I create the best work is actually when I'm doing well, most like mentally, and like have things in order. Because like when I was like super broke, when I had no time, when I
Yeah.
was suffering at my worst, like it's just the words were coming. The
Right.
words were coming. Like, my writing has become better since more things in my life have become more stable.
Right.
However, the downside of that is, as things become more stable, you got less time to actually work. So it's like just this awful
Exactly.
paradox.
That balance is
So
hard. Yeah.
Yes, and so there was definitely a time there thinking like, do I just need to like just take a break from writing for a while and just really focus on saving money, which is a
Mhm.
very valid strategy. But it's just like, I'm
Yeah.
saying this like I've had the answer and I've come to the other side and I have the perfect balance. I don't. I'm
Yes.
still trying to juggle it. Like, I'm trying to figure out what the end to this anecdote is, but just that like, if you're out there and like you're trying to like balance like creativity with like actually making money for food to eat, I see you. I've been there. I'm still there, and like it's
I-
not just you who's having a hard time with that. Like it's hard. It's super
yeah.
hard. And it kind of goes back to this thing that like there's no shame in deciding, you know what, I'm going to prioritize a job that's going to like keep me alive and keep like the people I need alive and all that. Because that idea that like, oh, you'll sacrifice everything else for your art, bullcrap. No, not worth it. Your art's not worth it if you die. All
Right.
right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you, and same. Out there, everybody is. It's really difficult to strike that balance and to um, get to a place where you feel secure, just on a personal level, on a physical level, and also like in a mental, spiritual space because you're doing what you want to do.
Mhm.
And I would put in a strong vote for going after your joy, right? Because joy is sustaining as well. No, it is
Yes.
not food. No, it is not. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But joy does sustain you spiritually. And I think it's
Mhm.
important to prioritize it in your life, along with, your basic needs. And hopefully, somehow, some way in this future we're recreating now, we can have space where we validate that, where, the people who pay us to make our art validate that and are like, we know you need to be able to live and do your work. So,
Yes, that's always the dream.
right.
Eat and put out great work.
Yes, 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 absolutely. Well, it was so wonderful getting to know you and spending this time with you and hearing your story. The bits that we could get, I know there's never enough time to really say everything. But thank you so much. And I look forward to reading your novel and hearing the reactions and energy that it puts out into the world. So thank you so much, Rosie.
Thank you all for inviting me. Thank you all, Be More Chill fans. I love this
Yes.
musical. Like Michael in the Bathroom is actually one of the songs on the playlist for Malik, one of the characters, because like it's a song about anxiety. Malik has very bad anxiety. So just like I love that
Awesome.
y'all are doing this, and just all of you, thank you all for the support.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Rosie, and everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.